In this slideshow, we will cover the bureaucracy. We will cover the development of the federal bureaucracy and the expanding government. A recent high-profile example of a bureaucratic failure was Operation Fast and Furious. A U.S. Border Patrol agent was killed in a shootout with suspected border bandits in the desert in Arizona. Two of the assault rifles found at the scene were traced to a secretive project called Operation Fast and Furious. The two AK-47s that were originally sold from a gun store acting on the instructions from agents of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF. ATF agent a, ATF tracked these and thousands of other guns sold, hoping to trace them to Mexican drug cartels. Many of the guns spread so fast that the Bureau lost track of them. The federal bureaucracy is in charge of mundane tasks like delivering the mail and critical tasks like protecting us from terrorism. The American people delegate decision-making power to elected officials. These elected officials then hand over the power to enforce and implement decisions to unelected bureaucrats they employ. The Constitution says little about bureaucracy. The President is authorized, with the approval of the Senate, to appoint ambassadors, Supreme Court justices, heads of departments, and other senior executive branch officials. Congress was left with the task of establishing how departments would be staffed. The framers did not envision the size of bureaucracy that we have today. Early Congress was wary of delegating too much power to the executive, but also they knew that there was a need for delegation. The first departments were the Treasury, State, and War. The advantage of delegating authority to the executive is efficiency. The disadvantage is that the person in power might use their authority to pursue interests other than those of the congressional majority. For many decades, the federal government had few responsibilities and was small. President Washington sought to appoint civil servants respected in their communities. Early presidents spent much of their time filling vacancies in what was a relatively small bureaucracy. The people appointed often had to post bonds of money or property that they would forfeit if they failed to perform the duties of their office. This was done in an attempt to limit corruption. Civil servants would sometimes hand down their posts to their children when they could no longer do the work. President Jackson supported rotation in office, where people only serve in a position for a short time, and then they return to private life. This led to the development of the spoils system, where government jobs were dispensed by the winning party in elections. Civil service reform came gradually as the spoils system became corrupt. The Pendleton Act set 10% of federal jobs under the merit system, but authorized the president to extend coverage by executive order. Presidents from Grover Cleveland onward did that for partisan reasons. They would protect federal jobs just before they leave office so they could prevent the next president from firing appointees. By the time FDR became president, 80% of federal workers were included in the merit system. This has ended the corrupt spoils system, but has also created career bureaucrats. Figure 8-1 shows the changes in federal civilian employment. As you can see, there was a sharp increase in federal employment during the New Deal era and World War II. Federal employment has leveled out in recent years. An important part of the federal bureaucracy is the cabinet. Cabinet positions have no special powers or privileges, but do have a leg up on scarce resources, and they do receive symbolic representation. Clientele agencies are agencies that serve a specific clientele. For example, the Department of Labor serves workers. The bureaucracy also includes the military establishment, like the Department of Defense. Following 9/11, the Department of Homeland Security was created because it was found that different bureaucracies were not effectively communicating and sharing information with each other that could help stop terrorist attacks. Another part of bureaucracy are independent regulatory commissions. They regulate specific areas. For example, the FCC regulates communications, and the FEC regulates elections. As you can see in Figure 8-3, there has been a growth in federal regulations since the early 1970s. These regulations are often negatively referred to as red tape. Be sure to watch part 2 of this presentation, Bureaucracy in Action.